You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk and it's it. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion new single, my hater, the big better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million, the devil, that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of What If Naruto Enters DanMachi. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Phantom system on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Lord Eshma, are you sure it is wise to offer such an amount of valise to that dirty-looking familia? Gregory, a member of Eshma familia, asked his god. Wouldn't it be better to simply take that individual by force? Eshma, a god who has taken the unsavory hobby of collecting individuals, whether they be ordinary civilians or adventurers, managed to catch his eye in order to breed them and create the perfect adventurer. He had succeeded in this endeavor in the past, and the result of this is his current familia captain, Enoch. Born from selective breeding, Enoch has displayed the strength of a level 2 at just only level 1. Amazing! You simply don't understand, Gregory, that boy. Eshma shivered in delight just from the memory alone. Just remembering his gaze, his handsome features, and his gait as he moved through the streets, it brought an unknown sensation throughout his body. He was perfect. He is just what I need to realize my ideal adventurer. Over at the side of the god's office, Enoch gritted his teeth in jealousy. Hearing that his good is giving a random mongrel such attention, completely disregarding his existence, was infuriating. He was with his god when they spotted their target. With perfectly structured features along with a flawless complexion, their target exuded such an aura of superiority that it made him of all people feel completely inadequate. But, Lord Eshma, please consider our dash. Gregory was harshly cut off when Enoch gave the man a fierce glare. If it is our lord's will, then it will be done, Enoch spoke with finality, making Gregory drop the matter. Eshma let out a laugh, as I say. We shall return tomorrow and demand Mayak for the adventurer. If he refuses again, then we shall threaten him by declaring a war game. With only 2 members at level 1, Eshma was more confident that Mayak will surrender his child. Understood, Lord Eshma. Enoch bowed his head. Why yes, Lord Eshma. Gregory followed suit. How about a second opinion? The entire room went quiet as everyone's attention went to the new voice that joined the conversation. There, standing right next to their god, was their next capture target. Sasuke's sudden appearance was met with shock as well as an ominous feeling bearing down on everyone present. It was as if death had come for them. With his single hand, he grabbed the god by his red hair and slammed his face down at his own desk so strong that it broke upon impact. The god, bleeding, went limp as he was immediately knocked out. Slam! Lord Eshma! Both Enoch and Gregory jumped into action, ready to take down the intruder. Gregory charged straight at Sasuke with daggers while Enoch quickly began chanting a spell. However, all their efforts were for naught. Sasuke's body flicked towards Gregory and knocked him to the side with a powerful kick to the face, sending him crashing into the wall, cracking it, before dealing with Enoch by shooting him with a black receiver that hit his shoulder, causing him to lose concentration and cause an ignis fatuus. Boom! Arg! Enoch suffered the consequence of not finishing his chant properly, causing whatever magic he was forming to destabilize and, quite literally, blow up in his face. He was knocked back against the wall, his body in pain, not just from his misfired spell but also from this unknown rod stabbed in his shoulder. He tries to move his body but is shocked to find out that his body won't listen to him. His eyes darted frantically, first to his god, who was still knocked out, then to the one responsible. The raven-haired man had his back towards him as he stood over Gregory's fallen form before stabbing him with the same black rod on his shoulder, causing the man to scream in pain before being promptly silenced with a swift kick on his stomach. You know, I never expected to find such filth that would remind me of Orochimaru's experiments within this city, Sasuke said, his tone dark and icy that brought an involuntary shiver down Enoch's spine. He left Gregory and walked towards the fallen god, picking him up by the neck before tossing him to the center of the room. But then again, you can find filth like this just about anywhere if you look strong enough. Enoch glared at Sasuke with intensity equivalent to a raging forest fire. His face set into a defiant sneer, "Lay your filthy hand on our god again, mongrel, and I swear I dash." He was cut off when Sasuke's hand began crackling in electricity, shocked to see a spell being cast without even a chant. The sheer intensity of the electricity was enough to affect the air around them. A tingling sensation was felt through his body despite being far away from him. "Monster," Enoch muttered, his mind was running a mile-minute trying to figure out a plan to get him and his god out of this mess. It wasn't until he saw Gregory slowly stir that an idea popped into his head. "You mongrel. Do you realize the consequences that come with harming a god?" Enoch spoke as he saw Sasuke's hand descend to the still knocked-out Eshma. Sasuke stopped and looked at him. His ringed purple eye now had commas, whereas earlier today he remembered seeing none. His right eye, which he definitely remembered was an onyx black, was now red with a starburst pattern. "I know," Sasuke replied. "I just don't care." Enoch was surprised to hear that. He said it with such cold calm that it made him shiver once more. It angered him that someone like him was being intimidated, but this was good, he had the monster's attention. Behind Sasuke, Enoch saw Gregory quietly get up, drawing one of his daggers. "You and your familia will suffer the consequences once everyone finds out what you've done. Your soul will be damned in heaven." "Yes, that's it. Just a little more, Gregory." Enoch silently cheered as Gregory got closer and closer to Sasuke. "Just a couple more steps." "And how are you going to do that?" "As far as I can tell, you're at my mercy and I'm still standing." Enoch just grinned madly, "Not for long. Now, Gregory." Gregory, who was quietly walking towards Sasuke, simply walked past him, much to Enoch's shock. "Gregory. What are you doing, you imbecile? Kill him." Enoch screamed at Gregory, but he didn't listen and just kept walking, towards him. "Gregory." Enoch's confusion was answered when Gregory got closer. And to his shock, he saw Gregory with the same eyes as the monster, staring at him blankly whilst walking towards him. What is this?" "Gregory. What happened, Ga?" Enoch was silenced when Gregory stuck his knife inside his mouth and proceeded to cut off his tongue. Blood splattered across the puppet's face, but he didn't react to any of it at all. Good to know that I can control people so long as they're knocked out and not just dead," Sasuke hummed to himself as he watched Enoch scream and writhe in pain. "Keep him pinned down. And if he tries to break free, then take one of his eyes." He didn't really need to vocalize his orders, but it was best to make him think that he was controlling Gregory via verbal commands or something similar rather than puppeteering. He also wanted to distract him from the black receiver still stuck on his shoulder. Enoch was now lying there, down on the ground, screaming in pain with his tongue severed, bleeding on the carpet floor while Gregory was keeping him pinned. He shook his head, pitying the stupid fool. Though it was probably his fault for giving Enoch false hope by pretending that Gregory was going to attack him from behind. With the nuisance out of the way, he continued to proceed with waking up the god. Zap. Ga. Eshma's eyes snapped open. His eyes darted around until they focused on him before giving the same fierce glare Enoch had given him moments ago. "You." He spoke with such venom that he might have mistaken him as venomous. "As I say. Release me at once and pay for your sins." How about no?" Sasuke then proceeds to stomp on God's stomach, causing him to spit out his blood. He held back immensely as causing too much damage to a deity might cause them to activate their arcanum and retreat back to heaven. He's only doing enough damage that a non-blessed mortal can endure without dying. I've investigated you and your entire familia, you know, Sasuke said, grabbing him by the neck and lifting him up, choking him. His hands jumped and grabbed Sasuke's wrist in a vain attempt to free himself. At first I wasn't planning on taking you down or anything, but when I found out that you were breeding mortals. Sasuke coldly looked the god dead in the eye. You reminded me of that bstrd Danzo. I thought that gods couldn't be any more disgusting, but you proved me wrong. So congratulations, you've successfully made me want to try my hand at killing a god. Eshma, knowing that he was telling the truth, began to struggle. He was brought closer to Sasuke, making him look at his mismatched eyes. Now, I'm going to make sure you're going to pay for all you've done. Eshma felt his consciousness slip as he kept staring at his eyes. I've already tested this on Mayak, so I know it works. Eshma, you will become my puppet, a mortal's plaything for me to use how I see fit. And once I'm through with you, I'll make you, a god, make you wish for your own death. Sasuke watched as a hypnotized Eshma freed the women and children he had kept captive, as well as the few members of his familia who surrendered. One by one he removed their fauna from their backs with a blank look on his face, freeing them from his clutches. His mind is completely dominated, nary a trace of his ego could be seen. Their biggest downfall was their power being sealed, which made them susceptible to mind control as much as mortals were. Mind control wasn't a threat in this world due to the fact that such a thing is only attainable through the fauna, and even still if one were here to get mind control magic it would most likely be less effective and would have plenty of restrictions, unlike his Mangekyo Sharingan Genjutsu. Or even the default Sharingan Genjutsu. His original plan was simply to pull an Obito and hypnotize Eshma into giving up on him and perhaps releasing the few adventurers he took. But when he investigated his familia's activities he had changed his plans. Women, mostly civilians that were kidnapped, were being kept as prisoners and forced to breed with, no, he was being too generous with that word. They were being raped, plain and simple, against their will. All because they were either forced or tricked into a familia they didn't want to be in. When he saw what was going on he couldn't just let this go. So, after securing the perimeter, by that, he meant knocking out all the guards standing outside, since killing them would alert Eshma, since a deity will know when one of their children dies. He then proceeded to stealthily and systematically take down everyone inside the mansion. As it turns out there are small numbers of Eshma's family members that were against all of this but couldn't do anything because it was an order from a deity. He can understand that, in this world, going against a god is unheard of and considered to be taboo. No mortal can go against a god's divine will without consequence, that's just common sense. But some of them were more than glad to follow Eshma's orders. So he made sure to kill those who actively participated in the raping first after he dealt with Eshma. After that, he inquired about who not to kill from the victims themselves, since there is a possibility of a whistleblower around. Thankfully they were more cooperative than he originally thought. Perhaps the thought of killing the ones who had continued to assault them was motivation enough. After getting the victims' testimonies he used his Sharingan to read their memories to get a more accurate picture of his targets. He had never wanted to murder anyone so badly after seeing what they all went through. Really now, Sasuke sighed as he continued keeping watch. It hasn't even been a year and I'm dealing with SHT like this. He rubbed his head wearily when he heard footsteps. Thank you for saving us. Sasuke glanced at his side to see one of the victims, a woman in her early 20s with long flowing brown hair, approach him cautiously. He couldn't blame her. Heck, he wouldn't even be surprised if every victim here developed some sort of phobia towards men. Don't mention it to anyone, PRD. The disheveled girl fidgets in place, struggling to find the proper words to say. Sasuke noticed this and sighed. What is it? Sasuke asked as calmly as he could without scaring the girl while he kept his gaze firmly on Eshma. The girl took in a breath, gathering some courage. I have a sister. This caught his attention. I want to find her. I promised a long time ago that I would come back after a year after earning enough money. She was trembling now. Please help me find her. She bowed her head, shaking like a leaf. She wants to find her sister. Can't she find her on her own? How long have you been here? Sasuke gently asked. 4 years. The girl replied, her voice trembling. I can't remember a lot of things after they forced me to take drags. That caught his attention. Drags? Sasuke asked and she nodded her head. He narrowed his eyes before he looked at everyone present. Who else was forced to take drags and have memory problems? Few have raised their hands. Thankfully it was a manageable number. He can help them all within a couple of days. He'll need to come with up a believable excuse though to tell his familia. Alright, everyone who has their fauna removed, gather here. I'll do my best to help you all and hopefully get you all home and back to your loved ones. But I'll need everyone's cooperation for this to happen. Now, let's start off with those who have families inside Ororio. Raise your hand and come forward, I'll escort you back to your homes after this. A majority came forward. This is going to be a long night. Sasuke, get me some more hot water and some clean clothes. As soon as those words left her mouth, a blur passed by, leaving a tub of hot water and a pile of clothes neatly folded beside her station. Naza said nothing as she wiped some sweat off her forehead before she began cleaning the injuries of her patient. One of the many women who came to the pharmacy looked completely awful. More than a dozen women came with plenty of bruises on their bodies and damage to their private parts. Naza knew what those injuries were and what caused them but didn't dwell on it and started gathering the women to a private room where both she and Mayak were busy treating them. Now, while Naza doesn't like women approach her god with the intention of flirting with him, she wasn't so insecure as to let a victim of RPE dissuade him from handling matters like this. Apparently, that wasn't what Sasuke thought, as he said that he thought that she would shoo Mayak away and handle all the women herself. He got bonked in the head for that rude assumption. She loves Mayak, but there is a time and a place for her to feel jealous, and now wasn't the time. Standing next to her, Mayak, garbed in a medical gown, called out to Sasuke, "Sasuke. I need the potions stored in the wooden box labeled high potions." Another blur and the box Mayak asked for appeared in front of him. Since Sasuke doesn't have any form of medical knowledge, he's been relegated as the errand boy. Getting anything either one of them asks for in a jiffy. This cut the time of getting the material themselves, allowing them to focus on their patients more. "Is everything okay, doctor?" Naza's attention was brought back to her current patient. She smiled as she comforted the woman. "Yes, everything will be fine. Luckily, your injuries aren't as severe as I thought and you'll make a full recovery." The woman sighed in relief as Naza saw her body begin to relax. Standing up, she went to fetch some potions when she stumbled and nearly fell. Kai-ah. But rather than embrace the ground, she was caught and placed on a chair by the same blur that had been running around since early morning. Sasuke was working double time by bringing in supplies for them and catering to the patient's needs, like giving them food and water. "Be careful, Captain, I haven't cleaned the floor yet," Sasuke said, stopping right in front of her to hand her a cup of water before disappearing once more. She looked around and saw the many used and discarded medical supplies were left on the ground. From bandages to empty bottles of potions, they were littered everywhere, making walking into a hazard. Sasuke returned a moment later with a bag tied to his waist as he started picking up the trash, placing them into his bag to dispose of them later. She would have felt bad were it not for the speed at which he was doing it. Not even a minute and the floor was already clean again. "Naza, do you need a break?" Mayak came back, just having finished dealing with his latest patient. His face was also covered in sweat just like she was before. The patients all came in the morning, just as they opened up shop, and it was now in the middle of the afternoon. The two of them had been working non-stop, only taking a break to eat lunch prepared by Sasuke, before getting back to work. "If you want, I can handle the rest from here." There aren't many patients left. Looking around, almost all of their beds were occupied, with some being shared by 2 people. When they couldn't fit anymore, Sasuke would come and escort them to some of the available rooms in their home. She shook her head, quickly downing the glass of water. I'm okay. I can still help, they need help. Putting the glass down, she stood up more determined than before. She lightly patted her cheeks as she approached her next patient. Thank you, once again. No problem, so long as you all keep your promise then we're all good. Sasuke said, wiping off the sweat of one of the patients staying in one of the rooms in his familiar home on the 2nd floor due to the room where most of the patients usually stay is full and packed. He is keeping more than 7 women company while helping the 2 certified doctors at the same time. At the same time meant that he made 2 shadow clones and had them discreetly help around without being spotted by anyone. This jutsu especially, cannot be found out by anyone outside the familia, even though he has yet to inform Naza about his true capabilities, but that's only because she would abuse him even more if she found out. And he'd much rather not suffer the mental burden of creating shadow clones. After all, he doesn't have a tailed beast inside him to ease the burn, well that and he wasn't an idiot like Naruto. Eat your meals and get some rest. Sasuke left a plate of food by her bedside before moving on to the next patient. He continued doing this until all of them were fed and were now resting, sound asleep. Letting out a sigh, Sasuke checked the time on a hanging wall clock before heading back downstairs to rest up a bit. Outside of helping Mayek and Naza by getting potions and cleaning up, he had to occasionally step out and buy some more medical supplies like bandages and the like. He also had to purchase some simple clothes for some of the women to wear since most of them came in with nothing but rags. Sitting down in one of the available chairs, Sasuke checked the time again and waited. Suddenly, a sharp knocking could be heard from the front door. Getting up, Sasuke opens the door and is greeted by the stern face of the blue-haired woman dressed in orange, accompanied by 2 more individuals garbed in a similar outfit to her, with the addition of a familiar-looking individual just beside them avoiding making eye contact with him. The blue-haired woman looked directly at him, her gaze unchanging. Excuse me, I am Shakti Verma, captain of the Ganesha Familia. We've come here to see the possible victims of abuse that have escaped. May we enter the premises? Her voice was cool and even, yet carrying a level of authority he expected from her. Sasuke noticed that she glanced at his exposed left sleeve, since he left his poncho back in his room, before quickly glancing at his left eye. "Achin." Nodding his head, he opened the door and let them come in. Shakti nodded in thanks, followed by the 2 that were accompanying her. Then to the final one, a former member of the Eshma family that he sent to report the incident to the Ganesha Familia, this world's equivalent to a policing force. After dealing with Eshma, he gathered as much evidence as he could about the immoral acts that the disgusting god was doing, to the point of even making him verbally confess all his wrongdoings. With this, even if another deity were to interrogate this man, he could just say that God confessed everything and would detect that he was saying the truth. Sasuke wanted everything about what Eshma was doing to come to light, which is why he organized everything this way. Collecting physical and verbal evidence, then giving them to the former members, then using said members to deliver the evidence. This way he was guaranteed success with a 100% success rate. The only thing he excluded was his identity. For obvious reasons. He meticulously cut off any potential loose ends or anything that might tie him to any more trouble that Eshma was connected to. He simply acted in the spur of the moment with next to no preparation. He had to do all this in the span of a single night. Were it not for the help of his shadow clones, this would have taken days at least. Closing the door, Sasuke spoke to the group. Mayek is busy treating the remaining patients. Wait here, I'll inform him of your arrival and ask whether or not it's okay for any of you to see them. They all agreed and waited. Sasuke went to fetch Mayek. A little later he came out with the blue-haired god. Lord Mayek, apologies for coming on such short notice. Shakti bowed her head in front of Mayek, to which he simply smiled and waved it off. It's all right, Shakti. I understand. The Two began discussing what happened and the investigation of the women in their care. As Shakti was explaining this, Mayak would occasionally glance at Sasuke, who was watching the proceedings happen with a watchful eye. So Eshma was the one responsible for all of this. Despite his soft voice, the anger could be felt when Mayak spoke. His hands clenched into fists were shaking in barely restrained anger. "Where is he now?" Mayak asked through gritted teeth. Seeing this, Shakti chooses to answer truthfully, "We don't know. We suspected that he fled Ororio, but it wouldn't explain why some of the former members have their fauna removed." "Some." Shakti grimaced before answering, "We first went to the Eshma Familia home to investigate and hopefully find some clues. However, once we got there we saw a pile of burnt bodies stacked on top of one another in the front yard. With the help from one of the former members who reported to us, we were able to identify, albeit barely, the bodies that belonged to the Eshma Familia." Shakti gritted her teeth as her gaze turned steely. Apparently, from their testimonies, all of them were the ones who participated in the activities of the Familia. That's right, after he had Eshma under his control, Sasuke didn't hesitate to kill all who participated in the debauchery. It helped that many of the victims were actively helping with the killing, using whatever they could find that could kill their tormentors. Sasuke tuned out the conversation, sat back down and rested. He advised that others do so as well, seeing that this might take a while. After they were done discussing, Shakti and the rest were allowed to see the patients. Sasuke had led them to the second floor, as the ones in the first weren't ready to talk. "Some are already asleep, but there should be at least one that is still awake," Sasuke informed as they entered the room. "Just be mindful of your words when you talk to them, certain phrases tend to trigger bad memories." With his warning given, Sasuke let them do their business and simply waited close by. Shakti nodded and approached one of them. Just as he said, most of the women were simply sleeping comfortably, with only one of them still awake, seemingly unable to sleep. Shakti cautiously approached with members of her familia following her lead. "Excuse me," the woman noticed their approach when they entered the room and had her guard up. Understandable, given what they've been through. It would be weirder if she didn't react that way. "I am Shakti Verma from the Ganesha Familia. We are here in hopes of answering a few questions to help with our investigations regarding the Eshma Familia incident." The woman sneered at the mention of the god's name. What do you want to know?" she weakly asked. "We were hoping you could answer about the individual that rescued you," Shakti asked. Sasuke, who was quietly standing at the end of the room, glanced at them. Testimonies from the former Eshma Familia members said that a certain individual threatened the god into removing everyone's fauna before disappearing with said god. Shakti saw the woman, who looked weary and was now looking at her with narrowed eyes. "Why do you want to know about him?" "The individual threatened the god," Shakti answered resolutely. Over to the side, Sasuke couldn't help but shake his head in disappointment. "Poor choice of words, Shakti. The Jinsha Familia captain strongly implied that they were going to arrest their savior, the person who liberated them from their torture from a cruel god who viewed them as nothing more than breeding machines. And to make matters worse, they were also implying that they were going to arrest him for the crime of harming said god." The woman's voice got heated. "He saved us." The atmosphere was getting worse. The two members that Shakti brought were also noticing the change in the woman's demeanor. At this rate, she might lash out if this continues. "That doesn't justify him harming a deity," Shakti argued, trying to reason with the woman. "If this individual is capable of harming a deity, then he is a threat to all the deities in Ororio. We don't want another gale wind incident to occur this time again." Valid reason, but not enough for an emotionally distressed woman that has been held captive because of the very god Shakti is defending. The consensus is reasonable: if there is an individual that's capable of killing the deities willy-nilly, Ororio will be threatened as a whole. Imagine fighting a monster in the dungeon only to suddenly lose your fauna because someone killed your deity on the surface. Ororio's fighting force will be depleted if that was the case, since this city doesn't have its own dedicated army. It solely relies on its adventurers to defend the city. But emotions aren't logical. She won't care about what might happen to the deities in this city. They can all die for all she cared. What matters to her is that she was wronged and Shakti having the gall to defend them. Also, who is this Gale Wind? He'd never heard of that name. And they supposedly killed a deity? Did they catch the guy, or are they still running loose? He'll have to drop by the guild's library and follow up on it. Maybe Rose would know about it. The woman and Shakti simply stared down at each other. The tension in the air was sharp enough that it could be cut with a knife. No one spoke and simply waited for something to happen. A moment passed, and the woman spoke up again. Do you know what it feels to be raped all day every single day for years? Everyone awake in the room, excluding Sasuke, flinched at her words. Shakti, who is affected most of all, grimaced and was about to apologize, but the woman didn't let her as her eyes became empty. Do you know what it feels to be treated like a SLV, to be looked at as an object rather than a person, to be forced to give BRTH to children that you weren't even allowed to hold? The Ganesha Familia swallowed, their tongues caught in their throats. The former Eshma Familia member that they brought along gritted his teeth as he clenched his fist to the point that his nails were digging into his palms, causing him to bleed. I'm glad that the god is gone. I'm glad that the things that tortured and violated us were ruthlessly killed. And I'm thankful for the only person who saved us. Avenged us. Freed us. If you think for a moment that what he did was wrong, then leave. The woman's face looked scary to everyone present, an empty gaze locked at Shakti's eyes that made the veteran level 5 shiver. No one here will help you. With those final words given, the woman laid down on her bed and pulled the sheets up, covering her whole, ending the conversation. Shakti said nothing and simply stood up and turned to leave with the others following. Her face told him everything he needed. Her face showed regret, sadness, anger, helplessness, but most of all, a pang of building guilt that she couldn't save them when they were all suffering. Thank you for having us. I believe we intruded enough, Shakti said quietly, bowing her head to Sasuke. We'll be on our way. Please give Lord Mayak our regards. Sasuke nodded. I'll show you all out. Shakti nodded and he led everyone out the door. As they were all leaving, he discreetly handed something to the former Eshma Familia member as he passed by. He said nothing and simply took it without a fuss. Once they were all gone, he went back upstairs to the resting room. The woman who they were talking to before was out of bed and is now standing up. Good work, you can go back to what you were doing before. The woman nodded before exploding in a puff of smoke, revealing that the woman they were talking to was simply a shadow clone using transformation jutsu before body flickered away. Sasuke anticipated that someone was going to visit them today. Investigations of this magnitude will require immediate action. He fully expected the Ganesha Familia to send a woman to do the interrogations because letting a man do it would be a terrible and insensitive idea. What he didn't expect was that they'd sent the captain to question the freed women. He knew next to nothing about her other than her level, position, and her familia. But it turns out she is more easily manipulable than he originally thought. The moment the clone managed to successfully guilt trip her, he'd already won. She is now emotionally unstable and will be more prone to impulsive action. The story the clone told wasn't a lie. All of it was true, including the part where they would take the newborns away. His eyes hardened at that part. He already sent another clone to the facility where they were being kept, keeping an eye on things and making sure they didn't escape. Right now, he was simply waiting for the right moment to reveal the location. And now that the stage was set, it was time for the actors to perform their parts. Shakti walked along the road, her head down as the words of the woman she spoke to replayed in her head. Each word she spoke struck a chord within her as a knot began to form inside her stomach. They continued to walk until a familiar face was seen approaching them. Captain! Captain! Another member of the Ganesha Familia was calling out to her, seemingly distressed. As he approached, the former member of the Eshma Familia opened the note he was given now that everyone was distracted. The note revealed instructions that needed to be carried out. It's time. The location will be revealed. Once you've done your part, repent, or face excruciating death. The man swallowed. The former member was once a part of the group that participated in the debauchery within the Eshma Familia. It was only after the birth of his child that he started to regain his senses. He tried asking for his child only to be denied and beaten for even thinking of such things. After that, he never touched any of the women again and became part of the group that opposed their treatment. But that didn't absolve him of his sins. The only reason he was spared was because the woman who had given birth to their child pleaded for his life to be spared. Their savior agreed on the condition that he was to pay for his sins. He immediately complied. So long as his child is able to live happily, he is more than willing to do anything. His role was simply to act ignorant, only providing certain information when they mentioned certain phrases with the reason that knew them through hearsay. And only after everything is said and done, he is to turn himself in. At least he was allowed to see his child one last time. Back to Shakti, she watched as one of her familia members, Madaka, handed her a report. She read them as he began explaining the situation. We found a location that's connected to the Eshma Familia. His declaration was enough to gather their attention. According to some witnesses, they said they spotted a large number of cloaked individuals entering what seems to be a safe house carrying something in their arms then leaving empty-handed moments later. Who are these witnesses, Madoka? It's Madaka, Captain. They were orphan kids who happened to be hanging out in the area, Madaka explained after correcting his name. It's relatively abandoned so no one would think twice about orphans playing there. Shakti read the detailed report, but what was concerning was according to what was written, there were sounds of cries coming from inside. Her stomach sank, with the story they had heard from the woman before about their newborn children being taken away. She began piecing it all together. Shakti sharply turned to the former Eshma Familia members, Do you know anything about this? Her glare was enough to send shivers down everyone's spine, both her fellow Familia members and anyone who was eavesdropping. The man was not spared by this either and nodded his head. I heard some other members mention a safe house where they keep the future members, but I didn't know what they meant by it, the man stuttered out as Shakti began thinking of her next move. Should we head back and report this to Lord Ganesha? One of them suggested. What? We should definitely go. Another said. What if they run away again? This could be our only chance. Madaka approached Shakti. What should we do, Captain? Shakti gritted her teeth, the scorn-filled words that the woman had said still fresh in her mind. She clenched her fist as she made up her mind. No more dawdling. We're heading there immediately, Shakti announced, grabbing everyone's attention. Madoka, lead us to the area where the safe house is. While one of you escort him, she pointed to the former Eshma Familia member, and bring him back to Dash. W8. Please let me help, the man pleaded to her, his face etched in guilt as he fell to his knees. The truth is, I was also a part of the members who engaged in the activities. His confession was met with surprise from all sides. I realized too late that what I was doing was wrong. It was only when my child was born did I came to my senses. I know it's shameful to ask this, but please. Please let me come so I can see my child one last time. The revelation was met with silence. Shakti stared at the man with a dark look, her mind filled with utter disgust and contempt for the kneeling man. Take him back and put him in a cell. Make sure he's locked up and report back to Lord Ganesha. She then turned and motioned for Madaka to lead the way, leaving behind a distraught man to weep in despair. Later that day, Ganesha Familia would find the safe house of the Eshma Familia, and inside were indeed the newborns along with children up to age 5 being tended by plenty of nannies that were hired to take care of them. They were all taken away with the children being reunited with their mothers while the nannies were taken back to the Ganesha Familia home for interrogation. Afterward, once they were all healed, the women in the care of Blue Pharmacy were all called to the Ganesha Familia home where a tearful reunion took place. All of the mothers were reunited with their children. However, not all of them were claimed, some wanted nothing to do with the child they were forced to bear and immediately left without another word. No one stopped or forced them as they had been through enough already, and forcing them to take care of an unwanted child would be detrimental to the both of them. Thankfully, plenty of the women were more than willing to take the unwanted children as their own. With the help of the Ganesha Familia, they were all given a large sum of valis to help with their new free lives. Ganesha Familia also assisted in finding them homes as well as taking them back to their families and loved ones. All in all, everything turned out for the better with everyone getting a happy ending. Well, almost everyone. In an abandoned cabin, on the outskirts of Ororio, Eshma's unresponsive body was tied and sealed inside a wooden coffin. Said coffin has numerous strings of Far Eastern writing all around it. A single tag of paper was in the center, seemingly the source of the string of writings as it all converged there. The technique was used by Umbu and other special ops shinobi to capture and contain their targets alive for transport and later be sent to either be judged, interrogated, or killed. In this case, to contain the god indefinitely until he is needed again. Sasuke was writing on a desk he made using wood release, writing down certain things about his findings a couple of days after the whole Eshma debacle. He wrote down his experiences and his plan for the god. Seeing as his arcanum could be used as an external energy source to punch through a hole in space-time powerful enough to send him home. Though the chances of that would be unlikely. Closing his notebook, he sealed it back in his storage and left the cabin. Eshma would be fine, according to Mayak. Deities, despite looking like mortals, can survive without food and drinks. The reason why they do it is simply because they've taken a liking to it. Apparently back in heaven, despite having deities that govern over food, they don't necessarily need to eat, since they don't have the innovations mortals have when it comes to cooking food. Everything tastes plain to them. Once he was out of the cabin, Sasuke activated a genjutsu around the area to keep anyone from discovering his little hideout. It's strong enough to fool even Chunin-level shinobi. It was inspired by the seals used in one of Orochimaru's hideouts. That should do it. Sasuke watched as a thick fog appeared and surrounded the cabin until it was no longer visible. I should head back before the others notice. He activated his Rinnegan and a portal appeared in front of him. Stepping into the portal, Sasuke left, leaving behind a silent fog-filled forest. A couple of days had passed after the incident with the victims of Eshma, and Naza couldn't help but groan in annoyance at her conflicting feelings. On one hand, she was steaming mad when she heard the story of what happened to them from Ganesha Familia's captain, but on the other hand, said Familia covered the expenses for all of the victims. She sat behind her counter. She mulled over everything that had happened when Sasuke's words came to mind. What's done is done. They are free and healthy. Focus on the positive things rather than the negative. Nothing will happen if you keep dwelling over the past. He's weirdly wise when it comes to stuff like this. Naza sighed as she continued taking inventory. She needed to make sure Mayak didn't give out potions again for free. It was the weekend and both men were out today. Mayak was out stocking up on groceries since they were running low, and Sasuke was headed to a bookstore to purchase some new reading material. Strangely enough, Sasuke suddenly declared that he wouldn't go into the dungeon on Saturdays and Sundays, saying that both days were his rest days now. Something Mayak eagerly agreed with. She supposed that Mayak was worried that Sasuke was overworking himself lately and wanted him to take a break. The front door opened, followed by the sound of footsteps entering. Naza looked up to see a familiar head of white hair. Welcome, Belle. Here to buy some potions? The white-haired adventurer nodded his head, yes. 2 potions, please. Just 2. Don't you usually buy at least 5? Don't tell me, you've been cheating on me with another store, haven't you? Naza's faux look of betrayal was bought by the innocent Belle, who was flustered and began apologizing, causing Naza to drop the act. I'm kidding, Belle. Don't take it too seriously. Ha. Sensei did warn me that you might do that. Sensei. Naza tilted her head at the word. She was sure that was Far Eastern. Belle perked up. Oh. That's what I can Sasuke, when he's teaching me. Naza blinked. Sasuke is teaching you? Belle nodded, stars in his eyes. What is he teaching you? How to fight monsters. That along with other stuff like hand-to-hand combat in case I lose my weapons and some strategies when dealing with strong opponents. Oh, and he said that he'll teach me how to use throwing knives and shurikens, giving me some ranged options. I see, Naza rubbed her chin. This was the first she's hearing this, though there's nothing wrong with what he's doing. She still felt like he should have at least told her or Mayak about this. Do you two go to the dungeon together? If he's teaching Belle then he might be partied up with him as well. But Belle shook his head, ridding that thought. No, he said he didn't want to babysit me. Naza watched as Belle scratched his cheeks. He then paid for the potions before waving goodbye. She thought about what Belle said about Sasuke helping him out. She thought about the dungeon again, more specifically on the day where she almost lost her life. A shiver went down her spine as she recounted the events of that day. The Mayak Familia was going to the dungeon as usual, then they were ambushed by a horde of monsters, everyone was almost killed, and monsters were eating and ripping apart her limbs, then miraculously surviving that day and only losing an arm. Ever since that day she was afraid of monsters and would always freeze up whenever one would get too close. And when that happens, she's as good as dead. But Sasuke is here, he can fight monsters with no problem even after losing an arm himself. Come to think of it, Sheath or Mayak had never asked what happened to his arm. They were hesitant about breaching the topic, but after knowing him for almost 2 months now she doesn't think that he'll be bothered by just asking. The two had gotten closer after they all went out to celebrate Sasuke's first anniversary, taking the advice Sasuke gave her about being more open and getting to know her familia members now that she's the captain. If I'm with him then maybe I could. Before she could finish that thought the front door opened again and Mayak entered carrying in his arms bags of groceries. Ah. Naza. I'm sorry but could you help carry these to the kitchen? Of course, Lord Mayak. Sasuke was wandering the shelves filled with books looking for a specific one. He was visiting a bookstore that he visits frequently, it contains most of what he likes and varied enough for him to check for any new titles. Today it was empty and only the elderly clerk was here to keep him company. He passed by many books ranging from informal to fictional. He kept passing by until he found one that caught his eye. Tales of a Traveling Scholar. He muttered out the title and reached for it, just as his hand was about to touch the book another hand joined in. Soft, was the first thought that came to mind as he accidentally grasped the other hand just as a light squeak could be heard right next to him. He followed the length of the hand and saw a head of brown hair, a pair of short horns along with a pair of mocha ears with brown spots. A youthful face, staring at him with green eyes, her cheeks dusted in a light pink. However, what caught his eye the most was the bronze cow bell wrapped around her neck using a blue ribbon. What in the Ganyu goat milk is that? Overall, she's a young cow's, a demi-human race that resembles a cow, girl that's pretty cute. He mentally slapped himself at that thought. While he may have the body of a 19-year-old, he is still mentally a 25-year-old. She looks way too young for him to think such indecent thoughts. Pulling back his hand he addressed the girl. Sorry about that. He saw the girl do the same and attempt to speak to him but was paralyzed by his appearance. Like I said, a curse. As he was ruminating on his appearance the girl managed to squeak out a reply. And no. It's all right. She appears flustered, a common occurrence for girls he meets. Well then, if there's nothing else, he reached for the book again and took it before she could. The girl saw this and tried reaching for another copy but was saddened when it seemed to be the last one. Oh no. I was really looking forward to reading that one too, the girl lamented, her ears expressively drooping down. Seeing her looking like a kicked puppy, he supposed he could do his good deed for the week a little early. Let's ask the clerk to see if they have another copy in stock. The girl blinked at him, seeing him gesture to follow him. They both walked up to the elderly man and inquired about another copy of the book she was looking for. The old man left momentarily to check his stock. He came back holding a slightly luxurious-looking version of the same book. "I'm sorry, but I only have this left." The old man placed a thick hardcover book of Tales of a Traveling Scholar on the counter. "I only have this limited edition left. It's much more expensive than the standard copy, but it contains some of the author's personal thoughts about some of the chapters, adding more content for the readers." After that, he told them the price, which was quite pricey. "I can't afford that." The girl lamented yet again, looking at her bag of coins. "I only saved up for the standard one." The girl's shoulder sagged as Sasuke took a look at the limited edition book. Truthfully, he didn't know that there was a limited edition of this book or the fact that the concept of a limited edition of anything existed aside from food. "Here," Sasuke handed his book to the girl, surprising her as he took the limited edition for himself. "I'll buy this one instead." "Are you sure?" "HN." After they purchased their books, they exited the store. The girl happily held the book on her chest with a pleased expression. "Thank you again, Mr. Sasuke Uchiha. Call me Sasuke but drop the Mr. "Oh, then thank you, Sasuke." The girl happily said. "My name is Iris. Iris Bennett. Nice to meet you." Iris Bennett. Doesn't ring a bell. She's either a character that appears in DanMachi that I never heard of, or she is just a normal resident here. Either or. HN. Sasuke nodded his head and was about to leave when Iris quickly called out to him. "W8. Please, let me treat you to something." Sasuke looked back with a raised brow. As a way to thank you for helping me. Please." Usually when girls invite him to stuff like this is usually to get in his pants, how the tables have turned, so he usually politely declines. But he sensed that the girl in front of him had no such intentions and was simply honest about treating him in gratitude. So, against his better judgment, he decides to indulge a bit. "What's the war's dash?" "Let's not finish that sentence." "Sure." Iris let out a beaming smile as she led him to a nearby cafe. Luckily for her, he happens to like coffee. Although wasn't like those coffee snobs back on Earth, he was quite knowledgeable about certain brands and beans. Ah. He's already missing his coffee machine. It was so expensive too. After placing their orders, the two began making small talk. It ranges from themselves, and their shared interest in books, to what they were doing in Oreo. "So you're looking for a familia to join to become an adventurer?" Sasuke asked as he finished his cup. Iris nodded. "Yes. Although not for lack of trying." The girl let out a strained smile. "It's my dream to become one. So I won't give up just yet. I'm currently working part-time in this cafe actually. Today is my day off." HN. Sasuke stared at his empty cup for a moment. He could try inviting her to his familia. They most certainly need more members. While the Mayak familia is a business type and not an exploration type familia, that doesn't mean they can't have their own expeditions. Sasuke goes dungeon diving regularly, and the only reason why their familia rank hasn't risen is because the familia is an aforementioned business type and only consists of 2 members. It would be unreasonable to raise our rank like that. Plus, Mayak would be happy to find out if another member would join, and it would lessen the load on Naza, who is the one who is always maintaining sales. She could also use some more friends now that he thought about it. "Iris," Sasuke called out to her, getting her attention. "I'm actually a part of the Mayak familia. We're a business-type familia that specializes in making and selling potions in addition to being one of the few medical facilities in Oreo." Iris' eyes widen upon hearing that. "If you'd like, you can join our familia." It might not be one you're looking for, but it's enough to get you started at least. Wait. Really? Iris smiled upon hearing that. But Sasuke had to add one more thing. Though a fair warning. The Mayak Familia is currently in debt and we are working to pay that first. It's actually the reason why no one wants to join our familia in the first place. I'm telling you this now so that you won't come and join us with rose-tinted glasses. Sasuke pulled out a bag of Valis and handed it to the server before Iris could, even though she offered to treat him, he was the one who paid in the end. He stood up and addressed her one last time before leaving. We're located in the Western District. Just look for a place called Blue Pharmacy, and if anyone asks just say Sasuke sent you. Take your time and think about it before making a decision. Excuse me. For the umptieth time today, Rose sighed as she mentally prepared herself to deal with this nearly daily occurrence. Yes. How may I help you? Rose asked neutrally. The young adventurer, a black-haired cat person, was nervous. The young man's eyes kept peeking at her chest before darting back to her face. Where do you find quest? The young man stuttered out. From behind him, Rose could see what seemed to be his party members, consisting of two other boys his age, snickering to themselves. It appears that they've put him up to this, which further serves to irritate her. You may find the quests available posted on the quests board over there to your left. Oh. Thanks. The young man awkwardly scratched his head, seemingly not yet done. Rose sighed. Is there anything else, sir? You're very pretty. Rose said nothing and just stared at him with a blank expression for a good second before responding. If that is all, then please step aside for the next one in line. Oh, okay. The young adventurer was taken aback at the indifferent response to his advances. He listlessly swayed to the quests board with his buddies catching up to him. Rose sighed, yet again, dealing with young adventurers trying to flirt with her was a daily occurrence. Mostly it was young men trying out their luck since she'd already rejected most of the veterans a long time ago. As she was organizing her paperwork, someone decided to interrupt her, sliding up right next to her station. She caught a glimpse of silver tresses swaying in her line of vision. So, she could already tell who it was even before looking up. Someone's popular as usual. A shame that it wasn't a certain someone that said those words. Sophie's teasing got the desired results. Rose's tail started gently swaying, no doubt she was thinking of that scenario in her head. Her reddening cheeks only served to further prove her point. I already told you that he's not looking for a relationship, Rose huffed, putting away her stack of paperwork. And neither am I, in case you've forgotten. Oh, Sophie hasn't. She believed Rose's words since the day she first declared them, after losing another lover she took a chance on in the dungeon. She continued believing in those words, staying true to them until the day he came. Sasuke Uchiha. Age 19. Joined the Mayak Familia only a month and a half ago. Position, Vice Captain. Level 1. A handsome boy that suddenly appeared one day asking to be registered with Rose being the only one available at the time to attend to him. Sophie was right next to her when it all happened. The boy was respectful, yet only spoke very little and was straight to the point. Aside from his attractiveness, there is nothing else of note. Well, aside from his unusual left eye and a missing arm. Thankfully he wasn't annoyed by the attention it was getting. The two only spoke briefly before he left and Sophie thought nothing of it. It wasn't until he started speaking to Rose every day did she notice the changes in her coworker. At first, she thought that Sasuke was only talking to her because she was attractive, but quickly found out that that wasn't the case. His questions always involved the dungeon and familias. Certain laws inside Ororio, and guild policies that he needed to know. Aside from that he never asked her out, told her that she was pretty, or even flirted with her. He was completely disinterred in her. She thought at first that he just didn't swing that way. She shivered. When that thought first popped into her head, she got a scathing glare from him that gave her nightmares for a week. I think someone is thinking rude things about me. Seriously, can he read minds? How did he know that? She quickly discarded that thought and saw that it wasn't Sasuke who was interested, but it was Rose instead. She didn't know how it started, but all of a sudden Rose started engaging in dialogue with Sasuke. Whenever he would drop by, she would make an unconscious effort to talk to him. At first, she tried making small talk after he asked about monsters on the upper floor. She would purposefully leave things out to make Sasuke inquire about it, extending the length of their conversation. She then began talking more casually to him. Talking about hobbies and other interests. It was fascinating. Rose, the only guild employee who actively disliked making any meaningful connection with adventures, was happily talking to one. And it wasn't just her that noticed, both Misha and Aina as well. Those two were somewhat close with the werewolf, so they quickly picked up on what was going on since they were under her guidance when they first joined the guild. Sophie began thinking, what caused this sudden change in Rose? Was it his face? Did she get bewitched by his handsome features like some of the other female staff in the guild? Was it his maturity? He always gives off a mature and dignified aura whenever they talk to him, making some speculate that maybe he was a noble. Was it because he was younger than Rose? She tossed that line of thought out the window as soon as Rose snapped her gaze toward her, giving her a glare close to Sasuke's. If it wasn't all that, then what was it? What did Rose see in the young man for her to start falling again? Someone familiar entered the guild, causing both Sophie and Rose to perk up upon seeing who it was. He wasn't wearing his poncho that they'd always seen him wear, revealing his empty left sleeve. His mismatched eyes locked onto them, or more specifically at Rose, before walking up to them. Sophie looked down to see that Rose's tail started happily wagging, but kept that to herself. She likes to live after all. Rose. Sophie, Sasuke greeted them with a nod. Sasuke. Hey, Sasuke. What's up? The two returned the greeting with Sophie giving a lazy wave. Now that he was closer, they noticed he was wearing a shoulder bag filled with something. It looked like scrolls. Rose ignored it and spoke up first. Did you just come back from the dungeon? You're a lot earlier than usual. Sophie suppressed a snort. Of course, she would keep track of his time in the dungeon. Did something happen? Rose tried to hide it, but there was a hint of worry in her voice when she asked him that. Fortunately, Sasuke shook his head, alleviating her concerns. I plan on taking breaks on weekends, only going to the dungeon on weekdays this time. Mayak was worried that I might be overworking myself, so I plan on taking 2 days off every week, Sasuke explained before facing Rose. But that's not why I came here today. Rose, I need you to accompany me in the guild's library. There's something I want to read up and you might have more knowledge on the topic. As a member of the guild, assisting adventurers like this is among the many duties every employee has. So for him, asking her to help him in the library is pretty normal. But the truth was that she was very happy to be able to spend time with him. Rose nodded, with her tail wagging. She began leading the way to the library, but not before hearing Sophie's remarks. Enjoy your date, you two. Sophie snickered to herself when Rose stumbled in her steps. She looked back at her with an embarrassed glare while Sasuke wisely ignored them. Gosh. I'm never going to get over those two. How interesting. Sat atop her throne in the highest spot available in Ororio, Freya smiled as she looked down at the people below. She swirled the glass of wine in her hand before taking another sip. To think that someone is capable of such things. She giggled, her voice akin to a melodic symphony to anyone's ears if they were to hear it. You truly are a unique one, aren't you, Sasuke Uchiha? The name of a handsome man with a peculiar eye that she had met completely by chance at the hostess of FRTLTY under the guise of Sir Flova, a normal human waitress to anyone that knew her. The moment she had laid her eyes on him, she was captivated. She had never seen such a unique and contradicting soul before in her eternal life as a goddess. A burning dark flame filled with hatred rages on lies within him. A hatred so strong that she fears that she might get burned if she were to come too close. Yes, it was hatred in its purest form. But she could see that beneath all that hatred lies a profound feeling of love. A warm and soothing sensation. A love that's akin to a gentle campfire in the middle of a cold, dark, and desolate forest that's keeping you warm and safe. This love is hidden beneath all that hate. No. It wasn't hidden, rather, it was the source of the hatred inside him. A hatred born from love. The revelation surprised her. No mortal had ever possessed two different colors, aspects of the soul. For every mortal life that is born, they will always have a single color, representing their soul, and while it is possible for a soul to change its color through certain experiences that they might face in their life, no soul could have two colors in a single body. Until now, that is. However, the surprises didn't end there. What truly caught her attention, was despite the love and hatred inside of him, they both felt untainted. Pure, in fact. Pure hatred. Pure love. There was nothing contaminating the two. Usually, there would be lingering emotions attached to one's soul, but she saw nothing. Nothing in hate and nothing in love. It felt as if the soul underwent a cleansing. Did something or someone interfere with his soul perhaps? Made it the way it is now? From then on she suspected that there was more than meets the eye with Sasuke Uchiha, so she had sent Alan to spy on him, watching his every move after their meeting. When she heard Alan's first report, she was surprised to hear that in the following days, Alan discovered that not only Sasuke was fast enough to briefly escape Alan, but also strong enough to take on the monsters on the lower floors despite only being recorded as a level 1. Was there a trick? Did Sasuke Uchiha lie about his level to the guild? The answer would be no. She found out that the guild had originally suspected that first and had concluded that he wasn't lying as he has shown proof in the past. So if that wasn't it, then how? As she had Alan continue watching over him, something strange had occurred. On the 7th day she had him watch Sasuke, Alan came back reporting that he hadn't encountered him for the entire day. But not only that, it seems that he had misplaced his precious silver spear on the same day. He was quite displeased at that, so much so that he tore apart every nook and cranny in Folkvanger looking for it. It didn't help that he was being egged on by some of the other members. When Freya asked Alan about the details of what happened that day, he would have a sudden burst of migraines, and no amount of potions and antidotes could cure him of this, rendering any attempt at collecting info null. Freya took another sip of her wine before addressing the second person in the room. What do you think, Otter? Did nothing really happen that day? The other occupant stayed silent for a moment, his mind gathering all that he knew about the raven-haired man. From the moment he had gazed upon such an individual, all of his instincts, honed from countless years of battle against powerful adversaries, told him that Sasuke Uchiha was strong. The only level 7 left in the entire world, the man who holds the title of king, the one who fought and felled the gluttony of the Zeus Familia, felt that if he were to come to blows with Sasuke Uchiha, he would lose. He didn't know why he had felt such a thing, perhaps it was simply a warrior's intuition that told him so, or perhaps something more, primal. I believe that he had come to blows with Alan. Though, I have no evidence that would prove it so. It is simply my intuition, my lady. Is that so? Freya smiled as she looked back to her champion, standing still as a statue, ready to fulfill her every longing. How interesting. If what you say is true, then Sasuke must have done something to Alan that would make him forget what happened that day. Freya speculated as she played with some locks of her hair. Perhaps a unique form of magic. One that can alter the minds of its target, similarly to my own charm. Freya giggled at the thought, that a mortal wielding the same power equivalent to an ability unique to certain gods and goddesses would be interesting. But it's all just speculation, Freya said, putting down her wine glass before standing up and walking to the window, getting a better view of the people milling about down below. With Alan indisposed at the moment looking for his spear. Freya trailed off as her eyes spotted the very individual that caught her interest. The raven-haired man was wearing his dirty poncho walking to a wagon carrying multiple people at the western gates. He appears to be speaking to the stagecoach about something. She saw him talking to the elderly man, who nodded and left to man the wagon. Sasuke was also walking to the rear of the wagon preparing to board it. When he was about to get on, he froze. Freya was curious about what could have happened when suddenly he turned around and locked eyes with her, his onyx eye turning red. Freya resided in one of the suites at the top of Babel Tower. It was close to impossible for a level 1 adventurer to be able to see her, let alone make eye contact at this distance. She felt a shiver down her spine, but rather than the usual sense of pleasure she would feel when others would gaze upon her, it was more akin to a sense of impending doom. She recalled that the Far Eastern term for this was called a bad omen. She smiled and took a step back until she no longer could see him. She was breathing heavily, a pleasant tingle coursed through her. How interesting. This is the first time I've felt such a thing in the lower world. And his eye, she sat back down and picked up her wine glass, holding it up in the air as Otter filled it back up. His appealing onyx eye turned into an equally appealing red. She licked her lip and swallowed a lump in delight. How captivating. Otter. Would you watch over him in the dungeon for me? Otter, face betraying no emotion, lowered his head. By your will, my lady. Achoo. Heh. Are you sick, Sasuke? No. Someone unpleasant was just talking about me. He rubbed the head of the little girl who asked him that question. Her mother giggled as her daughter blushed and retreated back to her arms, burying her on her mother's stomach. Sasuke paid her no mind as he sat quietly in the wagon he was riding in. He was taking one of the many quests that would take the quest taker outside of Ororio. It was a simple SCRT mission that required a caravan of merchants, who were also ferrying people from nearby villages, to the city to buy, sell, and stock up on some supplies, as well as for the passengers to sell their own products. The pay wasn't that good, in fact, it was less than what a level 1 farming on the first floor would make. Which is why it wasn't popular all the much with adventurers. But he didn't take the quest to make money anyway, he just wanted to see what life outside the city was like in this world. It just so happens that he liked doing it. The worst he encountered while doing this quest was fighting off against bandits and thieves who weren't even blessed by any deities. Safe to say that no one is ever going to disturb this caravan anymore with him around. He continued to enjoy the fresh air and relative silence that was only broken by the occasional chatter by the other passengers. The little girl that was periodically stealing glances at him was something he'd gotten used to over the course of the last couple of weeks he'd met her during this quest. The mother-daughter duo became his regular acquaintances since their family owns a farm that specializes in growing and processing an assortment of spices. Since spices in general are highly valuable, they need to oversee the shipment to prevent their products from suddenly disappearing during transport. It also serves as an excuse for them to visit the city. What's wrong, Carol? Sasuke suddenly spoke up, spooking the little girl. Do you have something to say to me? Nervously, the girl didn't make eye contact. And no. She denied it even though it was an obvious lie. He deadpanned. Then why do you keep looking at me? Who's looking? No one's looking. Stupid. Idiot. Now Sasuke wasn't the type to get mad at children for calling him names, but if it happens that she would call him that almost every time they meet, it tends to get on his nerves. Sasuke helplessly looked toward the mother, Amelia Alvin, for help. He was never good with kids, he didn't know how to deal with them and would just end up treating them like someone his age. Sorry about her, Amelia giggled in her hand. She's just really happy that her favorite adventurer came by again. Mum. Don't tell him that. Sasuke watched that dynamic play out. He suspected that might be the case. So even children aren't spared by this face. He pulled something out of his pocket and handed it to Carol. Here, he held up a bag of sweets to the little girl. I got it just in case I ran into you again. The girl gingerly accepted the bag. Opening it, she smiled as an assortment of candies were inside. She began digging into them without restraint, preening at the sweetness. Share some with your mother, Sasuke sighed as he saw that the girl wasn't listening to him anymore before pulling out another bag for the mother. Here, cookies that I purchased as well. Gratitude for giving me some of your spices. Please share them with your husband. Ufufu. Thank you, Sasuke. You're such a sweet boy. Amelia gratefully accepted, taking one of the cookies and eating it herself. The ride continued until they made it to their destination, a nearby village home to the mother and daughter. There wasn't any trouble here just like last time. Sasuke exited the wagon first and then helped Amelia and Carol get down. They then bid him farewell as they headed back to their home. Everyone began unloading their purchases. Sasuke would have offered to help, but the last time he did, they were vehemently against it, so instead of just standing around he decided to visit the local bakery and purchase some sweet bread and sit in the shade, waiting for them to finish. What do you think he's thinking about? One of the female passengers asked her friend. I don't know. Probably just enjoying the scenery. Her friend replied, watching him. Yeah, maybe. Do you think he's single? Impossible. Look at him. I wouldn't be surprised if he had multiple girlfriends. Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want a piece of him? The two continued to giggle and gossip before being called by an angry stagecoach for not helping offload their share of purchases. Meanwhile, Sasuke just stared off into the distance, munching on his piece of bread while enjoying the fresh air and basking in the gentle breeze. He allowed his mind to wander a bit, thinking of nonsensical things. I can blow up that mountain. A single swipe from a complete body Susanoo would do the trick. He continued munching, already halfway finished, as his gaze went to the forest. I can also burn that entire forest down to the ground with great fire annihilation. I know the signs to use it. Once he finished his snack, Sasuke stood up and dusted away the crumbs off his poncho. He turned and looked back to the wagon. Over in the distance, he can see Ororio. A single Chibaku Tensei, planetary devastation, at a high elevation would be enough to wipe out everyone in the city. I doubt any adventurer could survive that. Morbid thoughts aside, Sasuke couldn't really imagine anyone being able to stop him if he were to get serious. Granted, he hadn't seen what the level 7 was capable of, so maybe he could fight toe-to-toe against him, but he seriously doubted anyone was capable of destroying a moon-sized rock falling from the sky. Oi! Mr. Uchiha. We finished unloading. Sasuke turned to the stagecoach waving at him, getting his attention. All of the packages have been unloaded. Your quest is finished. Here, let me sign the documents. Sasuke handed him the document pertaining to the completion of said quest. Stuff like this needs proof for the guild to assess. They needed proof of completion if he wanted to receive the rewards. After the old man finished signing, he handed it back to Sasuke, who pocketed it. We'll be heading out now, but I can still drop you off in Ororio. Do you need a lift? No, it's fine. Sasuke rejected the offer and the old man nodded, returning back to his wagon along with everyone else. Sasuke then vanished and ran into an empty forest. After making sure no one was around, he gathered chakra in his left eye. A swirling black and purple portal appeared. A spacetime ninjutsu that his predecessor was working on. An unnamed jutsu that can cross dimensions. A shame it can't take me to Earth, Sasuke muttered as he stepped into the portal. He felt a slight tingling sensation as he passed by it. He disappeared from the forest and reappeared in an abandoned building in the ruined district in Ororio, near the Hestia Familia home. But at least it can send me here. Double-checking to make sure no one was present, he exited the abandoned building and walked the streets of Ororio, making his way to the guild to finish his report. As he got closer to the guild he could spot a couple of the guild staff outside talking to some people carrying crates. "Thank you for your strong work," Ina smiled. She signed some papers before handing them back to the workers. "We'll take it from here. Thank you again and have a nice day." After bidding the workers farewell, Ina spotted Sasuke walking up to them. "Ah! Ms. Air, Sasuke, you're back." Ina managed to correct herself just in time to spare herself from his glare. "I heard from Rose that you took an SCRT quest outside of Ororio. Have you finished it already?" "HN. I see. Well, Rose is inside if you're wondering," Ina smiled, gesturing inside the guild. "She'll be glad to know that you're back already." "HN," Sasuke nodded before looking at the crates on the ground. "Supplies?" Ina looked at him, following his line of sight. "Oh, yes. It's just some supplies that the guild needs. Papers, ink, and other miscellaneous items." "I see. Do you need help?" "Oh no. We have people in the guild who can do the heavy lifting, but thank you for offering," Ina explained as Sasuke nodded his head. He was about to head inside when they both heard someone yelling out her name. "Miss Ina." Sasuke and Ina looked back to see a BLD-soaked boy running towards them with a massive grin on his face. "Miss Ina. Can you tell about Ace Wallenstein?" "Bell?" Sasuke blinked at the weirdly familiar sight. "I guess this means that the series is starting. I didn't know the guild had a shower. The guild is well equipped for almost any scenario." Sasuke watched in fascination as Bell was scolded by an irate Ina. This was the first time he'd ever seen the half-elf this angry before. He'd heard from Rose and Misha that Ina could be strict if she wanted. She always greeted him with a pleasant smile along with a welcoming aura. The dichotomy between the kind Ina and the Ina he's witnessing now was, as he said, fascinating. Standing in front of Rose's desk, he handed her the proof of completion, and she then proceeded to finalize it. "Finished. Here, this is your reward." Rose handed him the small bag of coins. "Was there any trouble?" Sasuke took the bag. "No, it was quiet as usual." "I see." Rose hummed, tucking away a stray strand of hair. Come to think of it, Sasuke noticed that there was something different about Rose today. He could tell from her body language alone that she was nervous, seeing as she hadn't stopped fidgeting with her pen for a while. And now that he was paying attention to her, he noticed that she had her hair tied up in a ponytail. He remembered making a passing comment about liking the particular hairstyle. Though at the time he was trying to imply that it would look good on him. "Your hair," Sasuke said, getting Rose's attention. "This is the first time I've seen you style your hair." He pointed out, unaware of the impact of the following words he'll say next. "It suits you. You look even more appealing." Clack. Rose suddenly froze in place and the pen she fidgeting with fell to the floor, rolling underneath her desk. Before he could ask what was wrong, she quickly ducked down to go get it. Sophie, who was standing right next to her the entire time, was grinning ear to ear, a fact he ignored in favor of Rose. "Rose? You okay?" Sasuke asked, leaning forward to check but was stopped when she held out her hand. "Why yes. I just dropped my pen." It's nothing." Beneath her desk, Rose was kneeling on the ground with her face red as her hair, desperately trying to maintain her composure as a dumb smile threatened to spread across her face. How could a simple compliment from him reduce her to some a dainty maiden? She receives more flattering compliments from other adventurers almost on a daily basis, but a single compliment from him had more impact than all of those combined. She cupped her face trying to compose herself but failing miserably. And what's worse is that her heart was beating so loud that she feared that Sasuke might hear it. Sophie was looking down at Rose with a perverse smile as she watched her freaking out. Her tail was wagging so fast that she thought she was sweeping the floor. She looked back at Sasuke and gave him a thumbs up. "Nice one, Sasuke. I knew you had it in you." Sasuke huffed. Why don't you help your coworker out instead of just standing there talking nonsense? Of course, Sophie grinned as she knelt down next to Rose. Congratulations on receiving a compliment from him. I think that's an accomplishment in and of itself. Come to think of it, I think this is the first time I've heard him give a compliment to anyone. Rose groaned. Sophie, not now. Come on girl, what are you doing? At this rate, he might just up and leave if you stay down here. She whispered into her ear, causing Rose to slowly come back to her senses. Didn't you say you wanted to go out with him? You even thought long and strong about it. So get up. He's waiting. Rose allowed Sophie to grab her by the arm and help her up. She has her head down, unable to face Sasuke at the moment. Still feel the embarrassment a few moments ago. Sasuke looked at her with slight concern. Are you sure you're okay, Rose? The werewolf nodded. Okay, then I'll be going no dash. Sasuke, Rose called out to him. He stopped and faced her. Do you have any free time 3 days from now? 3 days? Why? He asked. Rose took a breath. She looked up at him with her usual composed look, though with a tad bit more nervousness in it. I was wondering if you'd like to accompany me during Monsterphilia. Accompany? Like an SCRT mission, Sasuke blinked before shaking his head. Actually, before that. Monsterphilia? What's that? It's a festival that's held in Ororio once a year, Rose explained, secretly hoping that he'd agree. I see, Sasuke said, frowning a little. That does sound interesting. Rose's hopes went up as a smile slowly began to form. But I'm sorry. I can't go with you. Rose froze. She remained still, unable to reply. She had rejected plenty of adventurers before who were just going after her because of her appearance. So, to be on the receiving end of that rejection felt life-shattering. Sophie quickly butted in the conversation. What? Why not? Her eyes were glaring at him, scorching hot in self-righteous anger that promised death should she not be satisfied with his answer. Miyake told me to free up my schedule for that day, Sasuke explained. He said that he will need my help with something. Sophie internally winced. She couldn't say anything back. If it was an order from his god, then there was nothing she could say or do. Can't you ask your god to dash? She stopped when Rose placed a hand on her shoulder, shaking her head. It involves his familia, Sophie, we have no right to interfere, Rose said, her face stoic, making her think that she wasn't that affected, if not for the tiny amount of sadness hinted in her voice. She looked back at Sasuke, who was still standing there. We've kept you long enough, you can go now. Okay. See you. Sasuke turned to leave, but once he was gone Rose collapsed on her chair. This must be my karma, Rose said, rubbing her eyes, getting rid of the tears that threatened to fall. It hurt when he rejected her like that and she didn't even know why. It was frustrating that she was feeling this way. I've rejected many people's advances before only to be rejected in return when I finally tried again. It's not your fault, Rose, it was just bad timing, Sophie consoled her friend before giving her some encouragement. You can ask him out again when there's another chance. Don't give up because of one little setback. There will be plenty of opportunities to ask him out, like the Holy Winter Festival. Or even Valentine's. Sophie's encouraging words helped. Rose smiled, thanking her friend. Thank you, Sophie. She sat up straighter, her confidence returning. She's right. She'll try again. For the first time in forever, she is willing to open up her heart once more. She didn't know why she decided to do so, only knowing that her heart wanted this. Even if her mind told her that it wasn't worth the risk, her heart kept telling her otherwise. So, she was willing to try again. I'm back. Sasuke returned home just in time to spot a familiar head of long brown hair. Iris, Sasuke asked, seeing the girl talking to both Miyake and Naza. Ah. Sasuke, welcome back, Mayek greeted him with a smile. Come here. We have a new member joining today. Oh. That was faster than I thought, Sasuke said, walking up to them, standing next to Iris. It hasn't even been a week, but seeing you here means that you must have made up your mind, right? Ah. Yes. Iris replied. After you left SAS Air, Vice Captain, it was always been on my mind. So much so that I couldn't really concentrate on my work in the cafe. My boss actually reprimanded me for the first time and sat me down for a chat. Ah, but she was really nice about it, so don't worry. Anyways, we talked about my dream and convinced me to chase after it. Iris laughed a bit at the memory. It took a little more effort to push me to make the decision to join. So when the opportunity came, I quickly took it. Everyone blinked at the lengthy explanation, but that didn't dampen Mayaka's mood. Rather, he looked at Sasuke with gratitude for suggesting this place for new members. Naza was okay with it, despite Iris being a girl, she knew the familia needed more members anyway. So, Sasuke began. Have you registered in the guild yet? Yes. I went with Miss Naz, with the captain, she corrected herself as excitedly explained. She helped me get registered this morning while you were away. I see. Sasuke looked at her and noticed that she still wore the same clothes the day that they met. Do you have any gear? And have you been in the dungeon yet? Not yet, Naza interjected. I wanted you to be the one to take her to do all that. Naza yawned. Seems like she did another all-nighter. I heard from Bell that you were helping him train. So I guess you might know your stuff with combat and weapons better than I can anyway. Between the two of us, you're much more qualified. You were helping Bell train, Sasuke? Mayek asked. Yes. I ran into him a couple of days ago and offered to teach him a few things. I hope you don't mind. Mayek shook his head, no. It's fine. Rather, I'm thankful for that, and I'm sure Hestia would appreciate it too. Bell? Hestia? Iris asked, completely out of the loop. Naza tiredly explained. Lady Hestia is a goddess that Lord Mayek is friends with, and Bell is her adventurer who is also a regular here. Iris nodded as Sasuke approached Mayek. Mayek, do you need me after Monsterphilia? You know about Monsterphilia? Mayek asked. I was trying to keep it a surprise too. My advisor told me about it, Sasuke said. So, do you need me afterward? Not really. Why do you ask? Mayek replied, taking a sip from his cup of water. Earlier today my advisor asked me out to go on a date that day, Sasuke said, making Mayaka's eyes widen. But that's not all. Naza was now wide awake after hearing that, and Iris was just lost. But I rejected her. Mayek performing a spit take in front of Sasuke. Mayek, who was coughing and wheezing, put down his glass of water, got up, and grabbed his shoulders asking, why? Before freezing, realizing what he's done. Sasuke was now soaking wet, but that didn't deter him from answering. Because you told me to make time that day since you needed me. His right eye twitched and turned red for a moment. Remember? Mayek took a moment to process that answer. SHT. Before cursing under his breath. Sasuke, who heard that, could only raise a brow. Mayek knew Sasuke was quite popular with the ladies, as much as he was, no matter how much they both disliked it. But he noticed that Sasuke held zero interest in forming a romantic relationship with anyone. Now while Mayek respected his decision, he couldn't help but root for a certain someone. Rose Fannet, Sasuke's guild advisor. He had only met her once when he went to the guild to take down all the quests he posted before he joined, but from that one meeting alone he could tell that they were a good match. He couldn't explain it properly, but it felt like they just resonated the same energy. It also helped that Rose was discreetly inquiring about Sasuke's likes and dislikes, disguising her questions as making small talk. Well, it didn't help that her silver-haired elven colleague working next to her was snickering whenever she would ask about Sasuke. From then on Mayak began secretly supporting her. Do your best, Miss Rose. I'll be supporting you every step of the way. So when he heard from Sasuke that Rose finally asked him out, he was internally celebrating, happy that she finally made her move, only to feel like he got punched in the gut when he heard that he rejected her. Which was made worse when the reason he rejected her was because of him. Mayak? Mayak wanted to cry. He was really rooting for Rose. Mayak. I'm so sorry, Miss Rose. It's all my fault. Slap. Mayak felt his face snap in another direction. He blinked only to realize that his cheek was stinging in pain. Mayak. Earth to Mayak. Can you hear me? Did you even listen to a word I said? Mayak blinked, and he saw an irritated Sasuke with his hand raised. Are you done daydreaming? I am sorry, Sasuke. I wasn't paying attention. Mayak said, rubbing his cheeks. Sasuke just snorted, lowering his hand. I asked if you need me for the entire day of monsterphilia. Why? Sasuke sighed. I was thinking of asking Rose out if that was the case. If not, then I'll just ask her out another time. She helped out a lot, it's the least I can do for her. Yes. Mayak screamed, surprising him and everyone else. I changed my mind. I don't need you that day, you can go on your date. What? Sasuke was bewildered. Why? Actually, no. Don't answer. Just tell me, what were you planning for me that day? Well, Mayak poked his index fingers together, slightly abashed. I was hoping we all could go out as a familia again, since this will be your first monsterphilia, Mayak admitted. I was keeping it a secret until the very end because I was afraid Naza would refuse to go and I might need your help trying to convince her since she's been very busy lately. Naza quietly grumbled, confirming that indeed she wouldn't want to go. Now that she has plenty of resources courtesy of Sasuke, she had been holed up in her room experimenting and doing research trying to create another new potion. It was the only other thing she liked doing aside from spending time with Mayak. I see. Now I understand, Sasuke nodded, understanding Mayaka's intention. But I won't go. The familia comes first, in my opinion, and besides, he gestured to Iris. We have a new member now. It would be best if we give her a warm welcome, right? Mayak was conflicted. On one hand, he really wanted to support Rose, but on the other hand, what Sasuke said was correct. The familia should come first. Especially when they just got a new member. I have never been to a festival or any kind of event similar to Monsterphilia that I can recall, so I want to spend the first festival I experience in Ororio with my familia, if that's okay, Sasuke confessed. Whatever argument he had against that disappeared. Mayak began tearing up and tried to hug the still wet Sasuke only to be stopped when he placed his hand on his face. Sasuke. Please don't. Naza with the men with a smile on her face. That was kinda sappy, Sasuke. It was quite out of character of you. She snickered when she saw him roll his eyes, missing the quiet mutter he uttered. Well, he and I aren't the same person, after all. Just similar. Iris on the other hand thought otherwise. I think it was really sweet of you, Vice Captain. Thank you, Iris. Keep that up and you'll end up on my good side, Sasuke said, causing her to blush in response. No flirting with your juniors, Vice Captain, Naza playfully teased, causing Iris to blush harder. Seeing all this, Sasuke couldn't help but let out another sigh. Mayak was trying to embrace him, no HMO, Naza was teasing him, and Iris was already being bullied by the captain. What a troublesome familia I have. And yet, despite all that, he still smiled. He was truly fortunate to be here. In the late afternoon, the loud hammering of steel can be all around them. The heat, sweat, and spirit of the forge were palpable on one of the floors in Babel that the Hephaestus Familia used to sell their wares. Sasuke and Iris were walking along trying to find a suitable shop for them to buy Iris her gear. Looking around, Sasuke inspected some of the products on display, checking to see how suitable their quality is for a beginner. "Here," Sasuke said. The two stop in front of a store that sells both weapons and armor for relatively cheap. "We'll go and check this place out and see if there's anything you like." "Yes." They entered the store and began browsing its selection. Iris was looking for a good weapon for herself while Sasuke was offering his input. From swords to spears, daggers to axes, they checked out everything. "I'd like to go with these two." Iris chose a sword and shield set. Sasuke had refrained from making any comment that might influence her choice since this was meant for Iris to decide. If she believes that this is what she wants, then so be it. He only checked the quality of the weapon, making sure it was at the right level for her. Also, the excited look on her face dissuaded him from making any comment. Seeing the girl's eyes sparkle as an excited grin spread across her face made Sasuke smile at her enthusiasm. In any case, if she was going to pick those weapons, then he going to have to teach her how to use them. He wasn't a big fan of the trial by fire method for regular newbies. After they bought her weapon, they moved on to buying armor. However, there was something that needed to be addressed first. "My clothes?" Iris asked, looking at him questioningly. They were browsing for armor when Sasuke brought up the topic. "What do you mean, Vice Captain?" Sasuke sighed and ran his index finger all the way down her exposed back, stopping at her lower back. Iris yelled and blushed strong. She quickly turned her head to Sasuke for answers. "Your back is painfully exposed. It's a glaring weakness that can easily take you out." He then placed his palm on her back, causing her to shiver. "The spine is what supports our entire body, it is the lifeline of every fighter. So leaving it exposed is the same as asking for death." The severity of Sasuke's explanation managed to get through to Iris, who nodded her head, understanding what he meant. "You are neither strong enough nor skilled enough to forego wearing armor. So up until that, you see fit that you won't need it anymore, we'll need to cover up your back." Sasuke then reached out and grabbed a LTHR breastplate and handed it to Iris. "In addition to this, we'll get you some proper adventurer garbs. They're similar in design to regular clothes but were made to be worn over armor. They're tough and not withstand the harsh environments of the dungeon and then some." Iris nodded her head, happy to hear that her vice captain was taking such good care of her. As she was about to try on the LTHR breastplate, she noticed that Sasuke had been staring at her face for quite a while now. The attention of her super attractive vice captain made her blush as her heart began beating faster. "Is something the matter, Vice Captain?" Sasuke let out a hum, rubbing his chin in thought. "You're very appealing, Iris." Which resulted in Iris' face going nuclear red. What do you mean, Vice Captain?" Iris stuttered out. The sudden compliment came out of nowhere, her eyes started swirling in embarrassment. Does that mean that you like dash?" "I meant it objectively," Sasuke clarified, his face still focused on hers. "I'm simply stating it as pure fact. You are attention-grabbingly appealing, Iris." You turned some heads on the way here." Sasuke leaned closer, frowning in complete focus. At this point Iris's face was so red that steam was coming out of her ears, her tail swaying excitedly. The fact that her vice captain's face was so close to hers was making her feel lightheaded. Iris' eyes started swirling as she immediately ran to the changing room. "I'm going to go change now." A trail of dust was left after Iris ran to the changing room. The man at the counter yelled for no running in his shop but was ignored by both of them. While Iris was still reeling in the fact that her handsome vice captain called her appealing, Sasuke on the other hand was dealing with his own sudden revelation. "Do I have a demi-human FTSH?" Sasuke wouldn't lie, he did find Naza, Rose, and Iris quite attractive, but does that warrant this unusual feeling in him? It felt like a compulsion that made him pay more attention to them. But he felt the same thing towards Mid and Shakti, and they were both human. Wait a minute, come to think of it, he felt the same thing with both Belle, who is a guy by the way, and Ina, but not so much for Misha and Sophie. He also felt the same thing at the two waitresses in the hostess of FRTLTY. Seer and the green-haired elf, Ryo. He knew Ryo from the fandom. Seeing her on Reddit being called the best waifu in DanMachi with many of the fans going bat sht crazy for her. He doesn't know much about the elf aside from what he could remember from season 1. He heard that she became relevant in the late seasons though. Gotta keep an eye on her, just in case. So what did all of these people have in common? Was it because they were all part of the main story? But he hasn't heard of Iris before, and he also didn't think Mid made an appearance in season 1. Maybe they both appeared in the later seasons? Wait a minute. Wasn't there a spin-off or something? Yes, he remembered. There was this spin-off starring the Loki Familia. Sword something something. He remembered only watching the first 2 episodes before dropping it. Was the protagonist the Sword Princess? No, it was an orange-haired elf called, he doesn't remember. What should he do in this situation? His body is reacting to important people in the DanMachi story. Why does he have this ability? What is it meant for? I don't really care. Sasuke chalks it up as a transmigrator thing. It was probably a function that was supposed to lead him to them unconsciously or something. DanMachi is a HRM anime after all. Well, at least it's easy to ignore. Besides, I'm already swapped. My schedule is jam-packed with work. From ninjutsu training and fuinjutsu studies, my familia's debt, and now mentoring my new junior. I don't have time to deal with this mysterious ability. Sasuke sighed and rubbed his forehead. There was no need to overthink this. It is what it is. Iris came out of the changing room with the LTHR breastplate on. It perfectly covered her upper body, as well as her back too. Although, it's a bit tight on her chest. Her BRST was being pushed up with how tight it was. How is it? Sasuke asked as he approached her. Iris couldn't even feel embarrassed as she was much more focused on her breathing. Sasuke walked up to her and lightly chopped her head. If it's tight then say so. He then pushed her back in the changing room, closing the door. It wouldn't help if you were to die of asphyxiations before you could make it down in the dungeon. Stay there and take it off, I'll get you another one that's more your size. She heard him walk away before she could give him a reply. She removed the breastplate and sucked in a breath of air. It was really tight. She held out the LTHR armor in front of her, lamenting that it couldn't fit. I really like this one too. She pouted as she put it down. She looked up at the mirror inside the changing room to see that taking off the armor had messed up her shirt, exposing her bare melons. She quickly fixed herself back up again. Vice Captain was right. I really do need a change of outfit. She chuckled to herself, feeling slightly embarrassed. The shirt was more or less forced on her by a sales clerk, saying that it suited her. She was then pressured to buy it. At first, she was a bit embarrassed that her back was showing so much skin, but over time she had gotten used to it, to the point that it became her favorite top. I guess I'll have to change it. Iris. Here, she jumped a bit when she heard Sasuke's voice from the other side of the door. This one should fit you, this one is adjustable with straps. Iris opened the door to see Sasuke holding a LTHR breastplate that was similar to the one she was wearing. Hand me the one you were wearing before, I'll return it back to where I found it. Iris handed him the armor and quickly tried on the new one he got for her. Unlike the one before, this one felt much better on her person. She could breathe and move properly without much trouble. She exited the changing room just in time for Sasuke to check up on her. What do you think, Vice Captain? Iris unconsciously twirled in place as if showing off a new dress to him. It suits you, Sasuke automatically replied, causing her to blush. If you don't have any problems with it, then let's go and purchase it. Don't bother taking it off just yet. Why? Because I'll be teaching you the basics on how to wield a sword when we get back home. I won't let my junior brave the dungeon without knowing how to wield her own weapon. Naza let out a loud yawn as she fought strong, trying to stay awake. Her research on making new and better potions had completely messed up her sleeping schedule lately. Thanks to Sasuke for constantly providing an abundant amount of drop items that Naza wouldn't be able to get her hands on, she was able to freely experiment far more than what she could in the past. Noticing her new zeal for potion crafting, she had to promise to both Mayek and Sasuke to not overwork herself. They were very concerned, and in the end, Naza gave in to their demands, but she still tended to lose her sense of time and would sometimes continue her research until one of them would ask what time she started, only to be surprised that she'd been researching for over 16 hours. Right now she couldn't help but get excited. She brought out something Sasuke had given to her. Wrapped in a white piece of cloth were brown pills that were roughly the size of a marble. Sasuke called it military ration pills. He said that these pills nourish the body and can replenish one's stamina. According to him, it was made up of powerful stimulants and nutrients that are near instantly absorbed into the body and are said to allow the user to keep fighting for 3 days and 3 nights without rest. At the end of the 3 days' effect, the user is brought to the point of complete and utter exhaustion. Sasuke said that these are best used in emergencies and as a last resort, since the after effects are dangerous. He also said that taking more than one at a time can be lethal. He gave them to her so that she could recreate them and sell them in the future, with the condition to try to weaken the effects of the pills and reduce the after effects so they can be safer to consume. Naza was excited at the discovery of this new product and had been working tirelessly on studying the pills. She tried asking him how they made them, but Sasuke said he doesn't know how, since only medical specialists are allowed to make them. Which is understandable. But that didn't deter her in the slightest. In fact, it motivated her to work even more. Naza. It's almost time for dinner, can you call Sasuke and Iris? Naza was brought out of her thoughts when Mayek suddenly called her from the kitchen. It was already late and they had already closed up shop for today. She pocketed the pills, then got up from the living room and went to the back door that leads to a small, yet spacious, area in the back of their familia home. Good. Don't forget that feeling. Ever. Okay. Naza froze in her steps when she heard Sasuke and Iris' voices. Though she wondered why Iris let out a Don't loosen your grip. Hold it tighter. I am trying. Try harder. Sasuke sounded like he was pressuring Iris. And what did he mean by tighter? Before she could ponder more, she heard a soft thud, the sound of someone falling down. Please, no more. This is for your own good. Now get up. No. Naza's face slowly began turning red. Perhaps it was her sleep-deprived playing tricks on her, but it seemed like Sasuke was taking advantage of their newest member. But that's impossible, she knows Sasuke isn't like that. He didn't even show interest in the girls who would throw themselves at him. Then again, neither would she as she was in his position. She decided to bite the bullet and take a peek. Sasuke was standing over a fallen Iris with his hand wielding his sword. Iris was lying on her back, spread eagle, breathing heavily, holding her newly purchased sword and shield. You won't survive in the dungeon with that kind of attitude, Sasuke said, sheathing his sword. If you want to be an adventurer, then get back up. He then picked her up by the scruff of her armor, lifting her up off the ground, then placed her back on her feet. Phew. Naza breathed out a sigh of relief. It seems that it was all a misunderstanding on her part. I really need to sleep more, Naza sighed as she approached the two. Sasuke, Iris. Lord Mayek said dinner is ready. Captain. Iris tearfully ran towards her, hugging her for dear life. The vice-captain is a monster. He hasn't let me rest since we got back. He didn't even give me a break and just kept forcing me to do the same moves over and over again. It's for your own good. I won't allow you to half-butt fighting, Sasuke said as he approached the two. You will never know what can happen in the dungeon, so it's best to be as prepared as you could. Naza let out a tired sigh, not having the energy to deal with this. Well, for now, how about we all head inside and have dinner? The trio went back inside and convened at the dining table where a modest feast was displayed. Mayek certainly outdid himself tonight. Naza remembered that he also did this for Sasuke when he first joined. How time flies. Alright everyone, a toast to our newest member. Mayek raised a glass as did everyone else. Cheers. With the clinking of glass, everyone began digging. Sasuke was enjoying his soup in silence, while Mayek was happily conversing with Iris, and Naza was just watching the scene with a small, yet pleased, smile on her face. Her familia was steadily growing again. So this is the dungeon? Iris gulped. It's a bit overwhelming. Sasuke shrugged. You get used to it. He was leading the way, looking for a spacious area for Iris to fight. It was the following day, and the two adventurers were on the first floor looking for monsters. Iris woke up bright and early today due to a mixture of nervousness and excitement. She was already prepped to go when Mayek came down to prepare breakfast and Sasuke had returned from training bell. Naza was still asleep in her room and would take a while for her to wake up. So after finishing their breakfast, Sasuke and Iris headed straight for the dungeon. On the way, Sasuke was giving her the rundown on how the dungeon works as well as the unwritten rules in place. Stay away from other parties in the dungeon. Don't plunder the dead. Don't steal someone else's prey. Once they made their way inside, Sasuke began leading her to an open spot where she could safely fight monsters without anyone else interfering. The first floor is always littered with newbies along with other adventurers who can no longer go further down. This area should do, Sasuke said, seeing an empty space no one was using. It is also a fair distance from where other adventurers are, so there's no chance of someone bothering them. Iris, step forward and draw your weapons. Iris jolted into action at Sasuke's commanding voice. She tentatively took a couple of steps forward as she took out her sword and shield and then waited. Perhaps it was due to her inexperience as a fresh adventurer, but she was slightly doubting her vice-captain's orders because there weren't any monsters in the area. But as soon as she finished that though she heard the sound of something cracking from the nearby walls. Nervous, she turned back to look at Sasuke for reassurance. She saw her vice-captain staring at the wall with the crack, but she noticed that his onyx eye was now red. Before she could ask about that, Sasuke spoke up, eyes up front, Iris. Never take your eyes off the enemy. Her head snapped back to face the cracks. She could see something coming out of it. It was monsters. The dungeon. An unknown existence that has existed for as long as the history books kept record of it. It was the source of many tragedies in the past before the gods descended. It was also the mother of all the monsters that currently roam the surface. Even the one-eyed black dragon. And right now, Iris is witnessing for the first time how a monster is born into this world. She felt her heart beating as she saw the glowing red eyes of the goblin looking straight at her. Her body began to shake as fear began settling in. Her mind going through the motions of what-ifs. Like, what if the monster attacked her, or what if she was killed by it? A firm hand grasps her should. Calm down, Iris, Sasuke whispered into her ear. There's no need to be afraid. With the blessing of the god Mayek engraved on your back, you are given the ability to fight that monster. You don't need to fear it. You must only believe. Suddenly, Iris' fears began disappearing once she heard her vice-captain's words. So much so that it was enough for her to focus again. Seeing this, Sasuke nodded his head and took a step back, giving Iris room to fight the goblin. Be brave, Iris. Don't forget what I told you yesterday. Iris took a deep breath, remembering the brutal lessons her vice-captain imparted to her. A firm grasp on her weapon. The shield raised covering her chest, and her blade poised to strike down her enemies. The goblin who was watching the proceedings seemingly had enough of waiting and charged straight ahead. It ran straight for Iris with reckless abandon with the intention of taking her life. But the girl was not afraid. The words of her vice-captain gave her the strength to fight. She blocked the goblin's charge with her shield, the impact made her knees buckle, pushing her back slightly, but she powered through and pushed the goblin back, sending it crashing back into the ground. The goblin screeched in pain as it tried getting back up, but Iris' sword put a stop to that. She saw an opportunity and attacked the goblin with her sword. She slashed her sword on its stomach before finishing it off by stabbing the head. Iris breathed heavily as she pulled out the sword from the goblin's body, which turned into black smoke, leaving nothing behind. She had done it. She killed her first monster. A smile spread across her face as she turned and ran to Sasuke. Sasuke! Look! Look! I did it! Iris excitedly exclaimed, momentarily forgetting that she called him by his name. Sasuke chuckled, not minding it at all. I did. Congratulations, Iris. Iris beamed, delighted that she was praised. After that, the two began looking for more monsters on the first floor. Iris still listened to Sasuke's orders whenever he would give them, but was left to deal with all the monsters they encountered. With every monster she slayed, her confidence grew bit by bit. To the point that she was no longer hesitating when facing against them. She only had trouble when she was dealing with groups of monsters, but that was quickly dealt with by Sasuke cutting down their numbers to make it easier for Iris to fight. Sasuke watched as the girl's movements turned from hesitatingly stiff to confidently fluid over the course of a few hours. Though it seemed normal at first glance for her to gain this much confidence in such a short amount of time, the truth is that Sasuke actually implanted a hypnotic suggestion in her mind when he first placed his hand on her shoulder. It was genjutsu based on Itachi's ephemeral, his famous finger-pointing genjutsu. He copied it and then modified it, turning it into an auditory genjutsu instead. He implanted the suggestion of, "be courageous" in her mind, which helped her get over her panicked state. The genjutsu is still active and he'll probably just leave for the entire day seeing Iris is still fighting. Hiya. Ha. Hiya. And judging from the sound Iris was making, she seemed to be handling her newfound courage well. Sasuke watched as Iris was now taking down small groups of goblins with ease. His training had worked wonders on the girl. She may come to hate him later on, but like he said yesterday, it was for her own good. Ha! Iris finished off the last of the goblins. She was feeling pretty winded from fighting monsters non-stop now. The moment she took down her first goblin, it was as if she was possessed by something. A high she couldn't shake off. The next thing she knew, she was fighting goblins left and right, only stopping when Sasuke called out to her, telling her to take a quick break. Wiping off the sweat that accumulated on her face, she looked back to see Sasuke was calling out to her. "What is it, Vice Captain? I think it's time for us to head back." "What? Already?" She whined, disappointed. Akin to like a child being told to go home after playing around for too long. Sasuke raised a brow. "You saw already, but it's already noon, Iris. They left for the dungeon at 7 in the morning, just after breakfast. They've been down here for almost 8 hours now and she hadn't noticed." "Wait, really?" Iris was surprised. She didn't feel like much time had passed. "Yes, really," Sasuke said, motioning for her to follow him. As the two began making their way to the surface, Sasuke decided to make some small talk. "So, how was it? Having a taste of what it's like being an adventurer for the first time?" It was a lot different than what I first expected it to be," Iris confessed, a slightly embarrassed look on her face. "I thought it would have been a lot easier, if I'm being honest. And I wasn't expecting harsh training on the first day." "Well, you can't say it didn't help you today." Iris nodded, smiling at him. Yes. It's true, if it wasn't for those lessons you gave me I probably would have a much more difficult time adjusting and fighting monsters. She then looked at her sword. It didn't occur to me that I didn't really know how to fight after today. I guess that was really short-sighted of me, huh? So long as you realize and learn from it then all is fine, Sasuke said before he let out a hum. So, how are you feeling right now? After all that fighting, do you think you can still fight monsters if I wasn't here? Truth be told. I'd prefer it if you were here with me, Iris blushed, scratching her cheek before mumbling. Since your presence makes me feel safe. Sasuke pretended to not hear the last part. I see. Well, to be honest, I don't like babysitting people, since I feel like there's much more better things I could be doing with my time, Sasuke said, causing Iris' ears to droop down and her shoulders to sag. I'm also the one who's responsible for gathering large amounts of funds and high-level drop items from the lower floors, so I don't really have the time to accompany you even if I wanted to. The lower floors? Iris exclaimed in shock. But aren't you a level 1 like me, Vice Captain? Sasuke sighed, while I may be a level 1, my abilities are more than enough for me to handle the lower floors. Trust me, that's all you need to know, Sasuke said before chuckling at Iris' pouting face. Mao the Vice Captain is keeping secrets from me. Obviously. You just joined after all. Even if we are a familia now we all have a secret or two. Iris wasn't pleased with his answer and continued to pout. Well, enough of that, how about we head home now? It's a little late but Mayak probably cooked us some lunch. The two made it back home to see Mayak restocking the shelves with potions and other products. Ah. Sasuke. Iris. Welcome back, Mayak smiled and greeted the two before focusing on Iris. How was your trip down in the dungeon, Iris? It went great, Lord Mayak, Iris politely said. I managed to fight off the monsters all my own now. The Vice Captain didn't even need to help. Such utter lies, Sasuke rolled his eyes. That's great, Iris, Mayak praised her. I'm proud of you. Thank you. The two continued to chat while Sasuke decided to go upstairs to change out of his clothes. He liked his poncho but it tends to get in the way most of the time. He should probably consider buying a proper cloak if he doesn't plan on regenerating his arm anytime soon. Ah, Sasuke. Do you mind waking up Naza? She hasn't woken up yet. Mayak called out to Sasuke as he was going up the stairs. Okay, Sasuke replied, continuing his ascent to his room. After changing into a much more comfortable set of clothes he went up to Naza's room. Knocking on her door he called out to her but got no reply. This continued for more times until he decided to just enter her room. Captain, I'm coming in, Sasuke said as he entered her room. It was a mess. A majority of the drop items he collected for her were littered all over the floor. Looking around he spotted Naza slouched down on her desk, still asleep. He approached her, making sure to avoid stepping on the drop items on the way. Captain, wake up. Nothing. Captain, it's time for lunch. Still nothing. Quickly getting tired of this he grabbed her shoulder and started gently shaking her. Captain, wake up. You missed breakfast and lunch. You need to wake up and eat something. That seemed to do the trick as Naza let out an annoyed groan. A frown etched on her face as she glared at the person who woke her up. Sasuke? She groggily asked, her voice deep from just having woken up. Yes, it's me, Sasuke sighed in relief. He then helped her sit upright. Mayak is calling for you. Let's head downstairs. Seeing what he was doing Naza quickly called out to him. Wait. Naza's protest were too late. Since she just woke she was too tired and thus unable to stop Sasuke. At first, he didn't understand why Naza would protest but a second later revealed why. Naza was in her underwear. I can explain. Sasuke carefully took a step with his hand raised, looking like he committed an atrocious crime. A bead of sweat slid down his face, worried that he might have done an act of SXLHRSSMT on his captain. Never in his life had he thought of ever encountering a scenario such as this. This is something you'd see straight out of anime, Sasuke grimaced before realizing that he was indeed in an anime world. Oh. That's right. I forger. Silence permeated the room as a heavy feeling of awkwardness could be felt between the two. Sasuke decided to speak up. Can you please explain why you are in your underwear? No, actually, you slept in your underwear. Are you feeling alright? Did you catch a cold? Sasuke's worries overrode his feeling of embarrassment and approached Naza again, this time checking her temperature by placing a hand on her forehead. You seem fine, but it's best to cover yourself up first. Sasuke grabbed a nearby blanket and draped it over her. Thanks. Naza accepted the blanket, quickly covering herself. She was embarrassed that she was seen like this, by a guy no less. So why are you in your underwear, Captain? Sasuke asked, now that she's mostly covered. I was actually planning on going to sleep right after taking a bath, but then, Naza flushed, embarrassment flooded her voice. But then I suddenly had an idea that I couldn't shake off when I was bathing. Her head hanging low. I got out of the bath and I just put on my underwear and started working again. Shower thoughts, Sasuke thought. Well, I guess it would be bath thoughts instead. I guess that happens here too, huh? While Naza was wallowing in her embarrassment, Sasuke took note of the many notes that littered her desk. He activated his Sharingan and quickly skimmed through them all, and he was surprised by what he saw. Most, if not all of them, were recipes for brand new potions. Ranging from being able to heal wounds faster, increasing the effect of mending bones, granting poison resistance for a short PRD of time, to even helping recover BLD loss. All of these were like straight out of an RPG. This is amazing, Naza, Sasuke complimented as he looked at all of her notes. She's even taking a look at the pills he gave her and was working on making a slightly weaker version of it. You're amazing, I've never seen this much variety before. I don't think Jian's sect has half of what you've come up with in their shop. Seriously, she could give Sakura a run for her money with all of these potions. Naza blushed at Sasuke's genuine compliment. Thanks. It's really all thanks to you though. Sasuke looked at her with a raised brow before explaining, it's because you've been gathering all of those drop items that would be impossible for me to get my hands on. She pointed to the ones in her room. Along with bringing in money for the familia, I feel a lot less stressed than I used to, giving me more time to do things that I want again. She looked at Sasuke, her eyes gleaming with gratitude as a small yet gentle smile formed on her face. I'm glad you're here, Sasuke. Wow. Sasuke quickly turned away, hiding the blush that was creeping on his face. He won't lie, Naza looked appealing just now. Despite his cool-headed nature, Sasuke was still a man. He wasn't that immune to the charms of an appealing woman. It was difficult to maintain one's composure in the face of such genuine feelings. Naza watched as Sasuke turned her back towards her. If you're awake now, then get dressed and join us downstairs, he then quickly exited her room. However, once he was gone, Naza slammed her face down on her desk. Her usual stoic face was steaming red as the embarrassment from the entire situation finally caught up to her. From Sasuke seeing her messy room, to seeing her practically naked. Then saying all those things to his face. I can't believe I said that, Naza groaned, cringing her own words towards Sasuke. Unknown to the vice captain, she actually spotted the blush on his face just as he turned away, which made her feel super self-conscious. She didn't have any feelings for the guy. That much she can say with absolute confidence, but it was still embarrassing having a heart-to-heart with him in her undies. She groaned as she got up to get dressed, desperately trying to ignore the rapid beating of her heart. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 3. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Phantom System on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.